Okay, this is Tess. I am here at the Armadale Library and presenting Collect Routine Samples MSL952001 to a group of 8 people. It will be done in 2 separate sections. Just scanning around the class now. So you can see that everyone's here. And I'll pop it over here. On a very funny angle. And get out of the way so we can see me. Okay. Everyone, thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday afternoon for me. Here we'll go over a couple little bits first. If you've got any mobiles, if you can just turn them down so they don't actually ring. I know a lot of people have businesses and need to be in contact with people. Just keep it on silent. If you need to take a phone call, pop out of the room, take a phone call, pop back in, and I will catch you up when you come back in. You have a book in front of you and a pen. You can take as many notes as you want. Not everything is in the book, and the book also contains other little bits and pieces that are just background information on methamphetamine that I hand out to everyone that I meet. We have a DetectaDrug Facebook page. If you like and follow us on the Facebook page, most of what we put up will be articles that have been in the news or changes to any guidelines that the WA Department have or the Australian Government have. We'll put that up on there, so it just comes through on your feed if you're on Facebook anyway. Emergency procedures in here go straight to the front desk if you hear any alarms or see any smoke, and you will be shown exactly what is the correct route to take downstairs from there. Okay, the session outcome for today, for the 2 sessions, we'll be learning the basics on how to assess, record, and test for methamphetamine on the surface of your client's properties. And also includes access to their properties, because not every property is easy to get into, and you have to liaise with many different people. Does anyone know the basics of what methamphetamine is made of here? No? No one? Don't know anything about the cooking? It's just some of there's a big long list in your book, but just some of the things they have in it is lithium batteries, methanol, household drain cleaner, cold and flu tablets. Not so much anymore because they've changed what they're putting in the cold and flu tablets to stop that. Nail polish remover, starter fluid. I've got matches up here. A lot of people think it's for the actual red head on the striking on the match that flames. It's actually the striker plate that they're wanting that, and you'll see them that they've soaked them in something like the toluene, and then they scraped all that off. So anything like flares or anything that has something that will ignite in them. Yeah, so they're looking for that sort of thing. Cold and flu tablets, they used to be the go-to thing, and a lot of chemists were done over because of this. They've changed the whole makeup of a lot of cold and flu tablets specifically to stop them being used in the methamphetamine trade, but you can still get some that will do it. Do you know how people take it?
Smoking?
Yep.
Injecting?
Yeah.
And snorting.
Snorting, yes. They get high in all different sorts of ways. They smoke, they inject, they will snort. You can get it in a liquid format as well, and it can be put in drinks, food, coffee, whatever. Some people also take it anally, but I decided not to put a picture of that one up. So, this is sort of a recap on just sort of what we've gone over earlier. So, do you know much about methamphetamine in the home, how it can affect occupants?
Skin allergies?
Yes.
Just mainly irritation in eyes. And also, it just gets in everything, clothes,
absolutely,
carpets, curtains, everything.
Yes, yep. What it does is, when people, specifically when they smoke methamphetamine or cook methamphetamine in the house, it does get into pretty well everything. It becomes a vapour, it goes up, and anything that's porous enough for it to be soaked into and get trapped into, it will. The problem with it, and I'm not a scientist, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and I've done some training, and it was explained to me that when it is in a vapour form, it hits the surface, it gets sucked into the surface, and then it changes its makeup, and therefore it locks into the surface. And that's where it's got to be specifically remediated to get it back out of that surface. Now, with regard to effects, the effects are as long as my arm, the different sorts of things that can happen. I know someone personally who looked like she had, we thought it was psoriasis all over her body. What she didn't know was she was sleeping with someone who was smoking methamphetamine in the bedroom while she wasn't there. So she was literally just rolling around in it in the sheets. She had anxiety problems, lost nearly 16 kilos in weight, major depression, and it was a year and a half before we worked out what the actual problem was. It wasn't until her partner actually had a psychotic break that they realised he was taking methamphetamine. He was a very high achieving young man, doing well in life. No one expected that would be something that would happen. So psoriasis-like problems, asthma in children. Children, pets are very susceptible to methamphetamine because what goes up when it's vaporised must come down, therefore ends up on your carpets. Okay, do we know what a meth-contaminated home looks like?
Your normal home, I guess.
Yeah. Anyone else seen a meth house?
They can look pretty disgusting as
Yeah,
well.
they can. They can look pretty disgusting because meth basically eventually comes before just normal things that we would do to live. Food, water, hygiene, anything like that. So all that goes out the door. Meth gets slotted in under there to begin with. So a meth house can look like that, which is pretty a basic house you walk into.
Would we be able to smell the cooking smells?
If it was a very heavy cook, yes, you would be able to smell, but it would be more like a ammonia smell. Ammonia, rotten eggs, cat urine, that sort of smell is it's the only way I can sort of put it forward how I can smell it. For me, when I'm going, I test a lot of meth houses. So for me specifically, I get itchy arms and I get a cough. This house was this had meth from back to front. This house was down in Lakeland. It had been completely trashed before. People had been there, they were there for 15 months before they'd been there. It was a show home. It was beautiful. I can give you the address and you can go and find the previous photos. It was so lovely. That was what it looked like the day I went in and did the testing. Most of the rooms were 0.5 micrograms per 100 centimetres square is what the government guideline is to say that yes, when it's below that, you can still live in it and you shouldn't have health problems. One of the rooms in here was 240 micrograms per 100 centimetres square. Yes?
What was the number you just said that limit is?
0.5 micrograms per 100 centimetres square.
And by these photos, are you saying that people who cook meth are not very tidy housekeepers?
Yeah, generally no. A really good meth cook would be very tidy because he has a product to look after. A lot of people, what happens is they get on meth, they can't afford to, they can't keep their jobs anymore because of how it affects them. They end up still needing meth and they go down the track of cooking it to either sell or make their own supply. And by the time they've got to that, no, they've got no care in the world. Meth comes before absolutely anything. So this can also be what a meth house looks like. Absolutely perfect. You just never know. So
You're talking meth use,
meth use
not
and
cooking.
you could a house can look like that when someone's been cooking in it. If they can cook and clean up. One young lad, the house in Dalkeith we went to, he had been mum and dad, he was at the end of year 12, mum and dad were going on 2 weeks overseas holiday. They said, you'll be right till you're a big boy now, you can look after yourself, get to and from school for 2 weeks. They had Uncle Bob come in and check on him and find him doing a cook in the kitchen. So he was doing very well at science, that much they knew, and chemistry. So, but no, he would have cleaned that up, and as in he would have cleaned the kitchen up, but the meth contamination still would have been there. And how much that affected the occupants is 100% down to how the occupants react to the methamphetamine itself. Deb could walk into a house and I could walk in together. Deb would have absolutely no problems at all with a methamphetamine contamination, no effect on her at all, and I would be going, oh, have you got cats?
Yeah.
I'm itching, I've got allergies, you've got cats in here. And I also get one gland up in this side of my throat, so other people I work with, they immediately start coughing the minute they go in, or it's like a dry cough where you go, and it's not until you do it about the 15th time that you go, oh, and it's usually while you're setting up and that, and you can bet your bottom buck if that, for this particular guy, if that happens, he will eventually, on the first test we'll find meth. So, yeah, it's...
Just send him in. Just send him in on your
So what we do before we go out to a property is we need to find something out about the property. The most important thing for anyone who is in any sort of property game, it doesn't matter what, whether you're going in and you're working in plumbing, in maintenance, in real estate, is basically the history behind what you're about to do or what you're about to take on. And it's very much that way with methamphetamine. It's the first thing we ask is the history of the house. Without the history of the house, it makes it that little bit harder to find where you test. It doesn't matter what sort of kits you have, whether they be analytical, rapid, Chinese, Norwegian, US kits. Unless you know where to test, generally you will not get the best out of your kit. So collecting the samples is a lot about history on that property. There is a copy of this in your book. This is basically what we've done here is, this is a general sheet that we would use if I've got someone else working for me. If they want to take a call, I'd throw the phone to them and say, here's a sheet, just ask these questions until they get used to it. So I want to know who's ringing, whether it's the owner, the renter, the property manager, their name, where they live, contact number. Now this is important. If it's the property manager, they've definitely got the right to do it, not a problem. If it's someone who's a friend of the person who actually lives there and wants me to sneak in and do their testing, no, I'm not going to do that. You've got to have some sort of ownership on the property to be able to do the testing. As a renter, yes, you can do the testing because you are living there and you're paying to live there. So if the actual renter, and I don't have to contact the property manager, I'm not going to damage anything, I'm just going to take a swab and say yay or nay. So, and if it was a renter, I wouldn't be doing analytical testing or anything like that that would damage anything. So, but people who are living in places, we've had one lady contact us and she said she had another guy living in the house, she was subletting it, and she was sure he was on meth. That after he moved in, she'd cleaned the house up, and after he moved in, suddenly a couple of weeks later, their daughter started getting asthma problems. What they forgot to tell me was they had actually got a cat in that time frame, and the little girl was actually allergic to the cat, and the guy didn't like the cat, so he never came out of his room, and they thought he was in there being a drug addict, and he was just watching TV and not liking the cat. So it's not always methamphetamine, and that's why getting some idea of what's going on is very important. Also need to know, has the property recently been painted? So you can paint over methamphetamine, but it will come through the methamphetamine. Painting over the methamphetamine is a very, very bad idea for anyone who does it, because it sandwiches it in between two layers of paint, and then it happens what they call off-gassing, and it slowly leaches through every time you clean it. And really the only way to get it out once you do that is to strip that paint back, and that's a huge job that no one likes to do. So we need to know if there's been painting. Has it recently been cleaned? Even if there is meth there, I can come in, I can clean it with just your normal chemicals. I can handy over the top of it. If I come in the next day and test it, it'll be fine. It's 2 days, 4 days later when it starts off gassing back through again, then it'll come up. So we need to know when the last clean was. That will make collecting samples a lot easier to find the correct samples. Basically, we go through who recommended us, things like that. Are there services on site? Are we going into something? We go into houses that are completely blacked out. they'll be boarded up, you've got lamps on your head. There's no electricity in there, there's no water and there's no gas. So you need to know what sort of services are available on site. Where you're going to get the keys on, what you've quoted, and are there any notes that you need to know about, so that just something like that would need to complete it as soon as possible, or before a specific time frame if they've got people who are going into a house to take it over, or they want to put an offer in for a house if they're buying a house. So site access. That's a house I went to. That was when I arrived. We had 6 police cars, 4 mercantile agents, a locksmith. We had agents there. We had, I said, owners on site. This is specifically, are the owners on site or are the tenants on site? The police were taking away squatters out of this particular property. So you need to know where you get your keys from, and make up some sort of process to always have all your ducks in a line when you go out. Site plans and mud maps. I generally draw up my own site plans. I don't have them to any sort of scale. I just, I can, if I'm going through an agent, I might say, it's a new property or fairly new property. I often have some sort of actual plans on hand, but a lot of the places are older places. If that's the case, what I do is I do it on my iPad, do up a quick mud map, and the dots here are where I have actually done the testing, and that will be very important if I have to go back and do other sorts of testing, or I have to have a place validated after it's been cleaned. I'll need to know all this information. So, and here I've just got the glass. That's because of windows. Window surrounds can be wood or they can be metal, and glass and all these things react differently to methamphetamine. So I like to show where the windows are because it actually shows why I might be testing in a specific spot. When I go into a job, we have minimum shoe covers, gloves and a P2 mask. So you think why I would have shoe covers on?
Because it absorbs into anything that's porous.
Exactly.
Now, is that when you're testing, or is that when you're...
Oh, that's testing.
That's just your
That's
basic testing?
a basic test. I would wear a P2 mask before, if it is just thought to be a smokehouse. If I'm called into something that is suspected to be a cookhouse, we go straight to the masks. The reason behind the masks is because methamphetamine, if it's been a cook, you pass that one down the table. If it's been a cook with methamphetamine, one of the things it would, some of the items in the cook, one of the things it will do is it heads straight for anything that's wet. So that's your nose, your mouth, your eyes. So if there's been a cook, we suspect at all there's been a cook there, we put a mask on. Now I'd like you to think of meth as dog poo. If you're walking into a house and there's dog poo on the floor, on the tables, on the curtains, on the walls, even if you're just walking in and out of that house, would you just then go back and get into your car with dog poo on your feet? Would you walk through your house with remnants of dog poo on your feet? It's the only way I can make people sort of understand that you can't see it, but it doesn't mean it's not still there.
And you can still contaminate.
Cross-contamination, absolutely. So with regard to the little shoe covers, we wear these, a lot of those shoe covers. We go through quite a lot, but we don't turn up at a house, put on Darth Vader masks, get out with kits and front the hell out of the neighbourhood. We don't even go out to a house with marked cars generally. We take all our markings are actually on magnets, so I can just flip them off and not scare people. If we're going into a house, we generally go up, we get right close to the door where no one can see us, or we get just through the door before we put everything on. So the gloves always, you go through a lot of gloves, and this again, so there's no cross-contamination when you're collecting your samples. P2 mask is a great place to start. I had one here, there you go. That's just a general P2 mask. They are quite comfortable to wear. If you wear glasses, they're quite uncomfortable to wear because everything backs back up your glasses and fogs up. If that's the case and you have a problem with that, we have a similar mask like this, but it only goes over our nose. We have a lot of staff who prefer to wear that sort of mask rather than a P2 because they say they tend to throw air back up on your glasses and fog your glasses, which can be a little bit annoying. The jumpsuit, if we're going into what we consider to be a smokehouse, we would just put on a dust suit because that's all we're worried about, keeping things off our clothes. If we're going into a house where it could be wet inside, it could be, there could have been a cook, we're going to be climbing over piles of clothes and things, we would put on a full suit, but they're about $40 a pop, so you don't put them on willy-nilly, and they've got to be thrown out after you've worn them. So generally, just a straight dust suit is what we're doing, is we're just keeping any contamination off us. You think you don't touch much when you go to a place. I don't know if you've ever walked around somewhere that's still got wet paint in it, and how many times you've brushed against something, and you wouldn't think you had touched anything in the house, but you touch stuff all the time without even thinking about it. And we always carry a black rubbish bag with us, like that. That's my working kit here for later, if anyone wants to have a look at it. The black plastic bag is my clean zone when I walk in somewhere and set up my kit. Okay, before you enter a property, no, we don't have to look like Dick Tracy running around the street, ducking and diving behind bushes, but you've got to survey what's happening around you. If you're going into houses, it could have been used by someone who's taking meth, or there was someone selling meth there and smoking it. There could be people around who are coming back to get another hit, or who know that it's available there, so they could come back to the property. Hence we say survey the street, have a look around, see if there's people loitering in cars just watching. They might be waiting for someone to come along. Even if you know the house is empty, knock first. You are there to collect a sample, you are there with the permission of someone, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be someone very angry inside who believes that they have the right to be there and you don't, so you don't antagonise anyone. I always, after I've knocked and got nothing, I open the door and I yell out, is anyone there? And I listen for scurrying feet and people closing doors and hiding. Shut the door behind you. Then I walk around the inside of the property. While I'm walking around the inside of the property, I'm taking into consideration the air vents, the curtains, the carpets, the tiles, what sort of flooring there. If there's a hole in the ceiling, if anyone's up in the manhole, often you'll see the manhole covers open. Always be a little bit careful if the manhole cover is open. If you hear scurrying rats in the roof, it's more than likely a person in the roof. Yes, Ben?
Do you often go alone? Really go alone. It's only if I know that I'm pretty sure it's a safe situation. Yeah.
That I would go alone. Yeah.
So usually there'll be
Usually we go in doubles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most definitely. Once we've walked around the inside of the property and had a look outside, we go back into the property and re-walk through and then lock the front door before I set my case up. And that's just so you don't get any surprises. We've had people jump out of cupboards at us. We've had someone fall through a roof, through the ceiling, trying to hide up in the ceiling. They didn't know whether we were the police or who we were. So ears and eyes have to be open. If you're dealing, a lot of the properties are just really very boring properties that you're walking into, testing and walking out of. But if you're in a situation where it doesn't look quite right, trust your instincts and be very careful when you're out there. Okay, if you feel safe, lock the front door. Say, I lock the front door, the back door, I make sure no windows are open. Just make sure you don't get any surprises once you set up, because
I wouldn't like to have to leave my kit if something happened, but I would certainly just take off at 1,000,000 miles an hour. If I did, I keep my phone in my pocket and my keys in my pocket. I never leave them on a bench. Okay, here's a basic sampling kit that we use. Mine's over there, it looks way messier than that. But that's a working kit. So, it's different sorts of testing you do. We have our 100 centimetre square templates. These templates, when you are collecting samples, shaped like that, that's 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres. The kits that we use are rated to the 100 centimetre square area. So what we can't do is pop up our template and take a swab within there and then go, oh, there might be some over here and there might be some over here, and start swabbing all around the place. We have to pick the correct spot first, and that is the area you get to do your sampling in. No more, no less.
One per house.
No, we won't do. We could do two in a room.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
generally,
But you only go inside the square.
you must wherever you put that, you must stay inside the square when you're using that particular swab.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll go over that later. We have some trial kits there for you to muck around with. We have cassettes. When I refer to cassettes, we have these here. These are the cassettes that tell us that there is or there isn't methamphetamine contamination there. And very simple, yes, no answer, easy to use, and they're not too expensive for clients when they're getting it done, getting their sampling done. So that is the cassettes we refer to. Cotton bud swabs. When you're testing with a cassette, there are all different sorts of kits you can use. These are very specific to what we use, cotton bud swabs. They come in all different size heads and things on them, and some of them only have a little piece of litmus paper, which are a lot harder to use. So you've got to know the specific kit, you've got to sort of work with the specific test kit that you're using or purchasing. There's many different sorts. No matter which one you get, be practiced with using it before you go on site. Okay, gloves. Between every test, you must take your gloves off. So if I test here, I have a set of gloves on. I come back to my case, I write things up, do whatever I have to. The gloves come off, they go in a pile with the rubbish, a new set of gloves on, and I go and do the next test. So I walk from room to room, and between everyone I must take the gloves off and put a fresh set of gloves on, so I'm not taking the contamination from the last room into the new room. It can seem really wasteful, but it's how it really has to be done. We've got analytical tubes and methanol swabs. These are ones that have been completed at the property that have positive for methamphetamine. When we get them, we have them made up in sterile conditions, and they come as a tube and batch numbers on our methanol swabs. Different people use different things. Methanol picks up the most methamphetamine that you can pick up in a swab. These ones here I refer to as trolley whites. It's probably written on them somewhere. These have got isopropyl alcohol in them. You can do 2 sets of these and you still will not get the same amount pickup that you do get on one methanol swab. So when you're testing, you can't go methanol swab in one room and isopropyl swab in another room. You've got to stick with one or the other, and it must be noted on your paperwork what you're sticking with there. Okay, your camera, iPhone, tablet, we record everything we do when we are on site. So when I walk into a room, if I was to walk into this room, I would stand in the corner and I would take a picture up, down, around the room. I specifically need to get in any air vents, any doorways and any windows, and what this is, it's actual proof of what the room looked like, and if I'm asked why I tested in a very specific position. So if there's a air conditioner in one spot and it's blowing straight towards a wall, someone might go, well, why did you test on that wall and not over at this window over here, which would make more sense? And it's like, well, because the air conditioner blew straight to that wall. Or why did you test over here? Because when I went in, I could clearly see on the carpet, that's where the bed was. Whoops. So that's, I can see on the carpet, that's where the bed had been positioned. So to have the information on visually on why you tested there is quite important. Also, if you have enough information, you can hand that on to a remediation agent to write a remediation action plan for you, and they don't have to go back out because they have all the different surfaces quite clearly pictured that they'll be working with, and they'll know what has to stay or go depending on the readings. Pen, I use a Sharpie on site because I use it on different surfaces. These are plastic, the templates, some of them are quite shiny so they don't like pens. I find the Sharpie is just the easiest thing to work with. I always keep a head torch with me, and I have my PPE with me. So they're the main things in your sampling equipment that you'd need to take on site with you. Any questions there? No?
You said that meth is attracted to wet areas, i.e. like the mouth. So have you noticed if you've walked into a place, you can just like feel it on your tongue or something like that?
It's coughing.
Okay.
It's coughing, itching, and right there. So I have, the highest reading I have been in was 240 micrograms, and we can only assume, because there was no equipment there, that they had done a cook in that room from the amount.
It was so high.
Yeah, from the amount of meth that was in there. But after the fact, even with testing, you cannot say conclusively there was cooking or there was not cooking in that room unless the equipment was found on site and going in the room. So.
And also, could it, like, you know, the average person who doesn't know any of this kind of thing be able to pick up indications that meth may have been cooked on site or used? Is there any?
Yellow staining is what you'll often find with a cook for methamphetamine. They generally cook somewhere where there's a water source, so it'll be kitchen, bathroom, laundry. Corrosion on taps and on the fittings under the sink, and that is just 100% all the different chemicals attacking the metal when it's been basically wet for hours when they've been doing cook.
Okay. And does that sort of also go for just meth users? Would there be similar sort of indications?
Not with a meth user, no. Meth user, you'd take about 16 smokes, 16 pipes to get up to about 0.5. So what you would find, it has to be pretty high, the reading, by the time someone's done a cook in a property.
But what about like yellow staining and all that? Would that apply to like a house being used by people using meth?
No, you wouldn't find that with people using meth. You would have generally no indication that there had been anything happening there, and no smell at all. So no visual, no smell. The main thing you're looking for with an actual smoker is proof of equipment being there with regard to pipes and things like that. You can walk into a house and some people ring up and they go, oh, I've had drug addicts living in my house. And it's like, you know, come the farm. They could be dope smokers if you're really lucky. And I know that's a terrible thing to say, but I can come and wash a house with normal normal chemicals after someone's been smoking dope in there. All it does is take the smell out and there's no problems. Meth is a whole different.
Due to the chemical compound.
Yeah, it is 100% synthetic, so it's just nasty stuff. Okay, when I set up for sampling, I set up in an area that I would find easy to get to from most rooms. If I'm in a very large house, I carry a tool belt, just a guy's tool belt, on-site tool belt around there, and I have everything stuffed in the tool belt. I have things tied on the side just to stop me, bags tied on the side for rubbish, and that's to stop me having to go back to the same central position all the time. Because you have to be very careful with regard to cross-contamination, it's not a great idea to just go from room to room to room. from one room to another. That's why I always come back to my central area. I have everything set up. I do all my data input while I'm on site. If I need to make the job quicker or I'm not feeling great, I'm not feeling safe, I might just go around and like quickly photograph everything in one hit and then come back later and put all that into the computer. Yes?
So you've got a plastic bag underneath your case, but you don't have one underneath the laptop. Is there a reason for that?
No, the laptop's just sitting over at the side. I just wipe that down when I get home. So I don't touch that. Once that's set there, I don't pick that up again. Everything else, all the photos and everything, they're actually taken on my phone and they Bluetooth straight across to there for me. So that just gets set up there. If I had, if the bag had gone out a bit further, I think that day the bag came out to about here and I was actually handwriting a lot of stuff on the little piece to the side, but I just use the wipes to clean it up at the end if I put it down on the surface. So. Some people are really, really pedantic about where they would touch anything down. But no, that house was as clean as a whistle, sadly. Photographically recording a room. This is one room that I've recorded. So I've just got it from all different angles. So you can see around the room. I can see the air vents up the top there. I can see the sort of flooring. It is down there, that it goes off to the bathroom, that it has a door out to the main room, and that it has a walk-in robe at the side there. All that information will be needed. You'll also need, if someone's doing a remediation action plan on this, you'll need to see that it has, what have we got here? Curtains in there. The curtains would all have to go. What else? It's got the metal surrounds here, not wood ones, so they could stay, but they would have to be washed. It's got the skirting boards here. If there was a lot of meth in this room, they would have to be taken off. And of course the whole room would have to be emptied out before you even started this. That's the sort of things we're looking for in photos when we're testing on site and we're collecting our information. Okay, the airflow in a property. Airflow in a room like this, if there were people smoking meth in here, where do you think I might test? If it had, I can hear the air conditioners going, so I know they're in here.
That return air there, probably. That's the return air.
Yeah.
Going up through there, so
Okay.
around that.
Unfortunately, you're 100% correct. That's where we would have tested in the past, but unfortunately the West Australian Department of Health has ruled out the cleaning of any ceiling areas. So we can't test there because it's not something it has to be done by anybody anymore. You don't have to clean the ceilings. So that means this whole room could be clean except for the ceiling. So now we've actually had that taken off our list. We don't go above 1.8 in height when we're doing our testing. And that's just a rule of thumb, 1.8, but that's because I'm about 1.6 and I reach up.
My other question was going to be, what about the gyprock ceilings or plaster glass or whatever that's made of?
For me, if I was putting a remediation action plan together for this room and it had a reading of 10, I would be wanting every one of those panels taken out and replaced.
Although you don't work above 1.8.
But I could put that through on my remediation action plan. The client could say, nah, we don't have to do the ceiling. And so be it.
Got some more questions for you, but
Yep, we'll go then later. Yes?
So that pretty much just means after you gather your data, you will know pretty much if you need to, like...
Yeah, once we've got all our testing back.
And then you can let the landlord or whatever know that
Yes.
you have got a reading that's this high, so
Yes.
you do, like, assume that the roof's going to be...
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We can go by the guidelines, but we can suggest we
Yeah.
can suggest a higher remediation.
Yeah.
So personally, I would head over here because even if I've got this chopped open a little bit, but even if this was shut, it would be pushing air out that area there. So if I hold my hand here, I can feel the air going out. So I would put my template over here because that's where I would get what I would consider a good reading. If there was a window in the property that could open just over the side there, I would go over there and do it as well. And depending on those, if it was a very big room like this, I would probably do either side of the room. So just have a look. Okay, the furniture layout makes a difference. So we look at the carpet and see where we've got places in the carpet. Heating sources, because methamphetamine is attracted to heat. Air conditioning, as I mentioned before, and fans as well. Okay, so when we go and looking for our methamphetamine, we have, we're looking for heat, like light bulbs. In the past we would have gone straight there, but you still get light bulbs on the windows, low down on the wall, so we can still test there. It is very much attracted to metal on the window surrounds, and that is because metal is cool, and when it hits the metal it cools fast and just hangs onto it. It attaches itself to glass for the same surface, for the same reason, but good thing about glass and metal is they can be quite easily cleaned. It gets absorbed into the paint in the walls and the ceiling, and it gets absorbed into wood, melamine, ceramic and cement, plastics and carpets. Carpets cannot be remediated no matter what anyone tells you. They cannot be remediated. If you know of a house that has methamphetamine, the carpets have to go. It is just no other way to do with it. If you look at the WA Department of Health, they will say you can have the carpets cleaned, but it doesn't work. All it does is bring the meth to the top of the carpet again with the hot water extraction process, and then what doesn't come out drops back down to the carpet, and you just end up playing the up-down game.
And then you vacuum it all around the house.
Yeah, and yeah, put the vacuum on, blow it out on the walls. It's just an absolute mess. We've had to go in and do a second clean on a house because they refused to take the carpets out, and it just ended up all over the house again. So if you know anyone wants advice on that, the carpets must go. It is absorbed into all soft furnishings. I could take these curtains down, I can wash them 3 times and I can put them back up. Just because it's a soft furnishing or clothes doesn't mean it has to go. 95% will be washed out in the first wash, and then after that, the second and the third wash. Second wash is to get the last little bit out, and the third wash is just in case there's anything left.
Is that obviously for any measuring?
That is for any.
Like, what if it was really high, really high? You just throw them out.
Yeah, look, it depends on the curtains. Most curtains, if you wash them 3 times, they're going to disintegrate anyway, or never go back into shape. So what you've got to do is you've got to look at an item and say, is it worth doing something with this, or is it cheaper to replace it? Yeah. So for a throwaway society we live in, it's often cheaper just to get rid of it. It's like light fittings, things like that are plastic and is absorbed in, flick them off, put a new one on. So, okay, we will have a break, and then we will come back and work a little bit further on a handout.